What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another preview/prediction video, and today we are here for potentially game of the year. It's Lions, it's Bills, it's Sunday afternoon, so let's get this started. Before we get too far into today's video, because I think this is one of the better preview/prediction videos, man, so stay tuned. I think you're going to like this one. But before we get too far into this, as always, I got to give a shout out to BetUS, man. Use that code down in the description, YouTube150, as they're offering a 150% deposit match on your first deposit and 125% on your next two deposits up to $2,000 currently. So if you're looking for a sports book during the holiday season because you're thinking, hey, I can walk away potentially with a little bit of money here, or I'm really interested, the Lions are doing their thing, and I want to jump on the game of the week, well, this is your opportunity. Head over to BetUS because right now the spread for this game, and this thing has been changing, the line has been moving. I've seen it get up to 2.5, but right now it's 1.5. Lions minus 1.5. We're nearly at an even pick'em type of game, and who knows, by the time this thing kicks off, it could be. So make it a count. That way you can follow up with the live betting, maybe get in on some alternative bets. The over-under has been kind of at a standstill at 54.5. Everybody seems to love the over. I kind of like the under for this game, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. And then, of course, you have all your markets. So if you want to build out a parlay of props like we do each Saturday, well, usually we do when we will this Saturday, this is the place to be. Currently, Lions minus 1.5. To be honest, I like it. I think we can cover that. So if I were to risk $10, I could win a quick little $8.33, which isn't bad, man. I mean, you go to Dollar Tree, that goes a long way. So check out BetUS. Use that code YouTube150. Now, let's get back to the video. Welcome everybody to the video. Glad you guys are here. And yes, we're back with another preview/prediction video. And today, a game that some are calling a Super Bowl preview. And the last time we faced this Buffalo team, in my opinion, it was like okay, this team belongs, right? We were starting to find our way and winning. And then we played Buffalo at home on Thanksgiving, and we gave them an absolute battle. Now, we lost that game, but we battled them to the end. The Bills got points at the end. It was like, okay, we belong. And the Lions finished off the season strong. Of course, we knocked the Packers out of the playoffs. And now here we are a few years later to run it back on our home turf, looking for a little revenge possibly here, and it may only be part one. Many things as you may like, oh, I kind of like how we could get them into this situation, or we could back them up, or whatever it may be. You then look back and you're like, well, dang, they do have Josh Allen, though. So how are we going to contain that guy? And that constantly comes up as the question. It's just like, I guess we'll just have to see how it plays out. I mean, we all know rushing integrity is going to be incredibly important in this game. We all know that Aaron Glenn's probably not going to play a spy because he never does. So how do you contain Josh Allen is going to matter so much. But in today's video, I'm not just going to sit here and talk about that for 40 minutes. That would be absolutely crazy. We're going to talk about everything in today's video. We're going to break it all down. I'm going to tell you my tendency projections for what we're going to see from the Buffalo Bills, the matchups, the things that I like, things that I don't necessarily like, how I think this game is going to play out. And at the very end, I'll give you my score prediction. Now, before we get to any of that, though, real quick, we do have some injury updates. Now, of course, we'll have to wait until Sunday for the official inactives, but the Lions have had great news for the most part to this point. They actually released their injury report, and as you can see, there is one name on there. Now, this name, it's a big one. For anybody else looking at this, they may not even know who the guy is. For Lions fans, this is a big injury for the role that he stepped into, moving off of James Houston, the Derek Barnes injury, then the Malcolm Rodriguez injury, then the Alex Anzalone injury, and he's been able to step in and play different spots. He's been able to play the sandbacker role. Now here he is out for this game in concussion protocol. Now it sounds like Dan Campbell says he'll be all right. So hopefully, going forward, we're able to get this guy back. But I guess he wasn't feeling very well, and now he's out for this game. The positive is that the Lions are seemingly really healthy outside of that because that's the only name on here. Of course, we have our IR players. But in terms of guys throughout the week that were practicing, DJ Reader is set to return this week. Massive. Taylor Decker is set to return this week. And I will point out, last time we played Buffalo, it was Matt Nelson at left tackle. Ali McNeil got through concussion protocol. Sounds like he's also going to play this week. Josh Pascal sounds like he's back. Levi Onwuzurike sounds like he's back. So basically that defensive line is a little bit back more to what we can expect as Lions fans rather than what we had to deal with last week, which shout out to those guys. Those guys filled in well, man. They played well. Miles Adams, Jonah Williams, those guys stepped up. Pat O'Connor, Broderick Martin. Shout out to all those guys. But it is great to get these pieces back, especially when you have a team like this, where with so much that's hard to project with a quarterback, you know that they're going to run the football. And you know that they want to run the football. So it always does seemingly come down to, if a team wants to run the football, can you stop it? Because if you can't, It's going to be a long day. On the Bills side of things, I think they are also getting pretty healthy. Set to get a guy like Keon Coleman back, where Matt Collins has been kind of the number 2 receiver opposite Amari Cooper. So now you throw the rookie back into the mix. You also have Dalton Kincaid set to get back, a team that loves to play jumbo personnel, but when they do play 12 personnel, it was kind of Dawson Knox, and then it felt like a little bit of like, all right, I don't really know who the other guy is. They don't make a huge impact in the passing game, but now you throw Dalton Kincaid back in there, and he's one of the better receiving options at tight end potentially in football, so they get that piece back. Defensively, they are set to be without Rasul Douglas. He has been labeled as out for this game, and my expectation would be that Jamarcus Ingram steps into that spot. It could be Kyer Elam. They could go that direction, but based on what we've seen with the LA Rams, he played 14 snaps. Jamarcus Ingram, 6'2", physical, plays to run, tough at the line of scrimmage. I expect him to step in. Now, I do think that there's ways that we can have success against him, of course, and he has played just over 100 snaps, so it's a little bit raw there. That being said, one matchup that I love is a guy like Tim Patrick, because he's one of these corners that are physical. They'll push you out of the play early, but I think he can be had at the line of scrimmage. And Tim Patrick's release package, which has been showing up over the last few weeks, would absolutely suit him well against a player like Jamarcus Ingram. So that'll be one of those little things to circle, is when those two guys get matched up, how does that play out? Also, on the Bills side of things, the safety position feels like it's a little bit up in the air. Now, both guys had limited participation reportedly on Friday after not practicing on Thursday due to weather, but they're both still questionable for this game. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Are there two starting safeties out there, or will Cole Bishop eventually step in this week? And with their defense, specifically that secondary, there's a lot of continuity there. These guys that have been in the system, there's a lot of talent. Christian Benford has been fantastic for this team. I think he's an excellent zone cover corner. And then, of course, the guy that they love to just never take off the field, Teron Johnson in the slot. He is an outstanding player that especially understands kind of down and distance situationally, defensively, and he's a menace against the run. And that's one thing that I will say. All of these secondary players absolutely play the run for Buffalo, which is probably another reason that they'll probably lean Jamarcus Ingram again in this game, because he'll do the same thing. So this is going to be an absolute incredible matchup, and I'm excited for it. And today, we're going to dive into how I think this will play out. I'll be right about some things, I'll be wrong about some others, and then we'll get to the score prediction, and maybe we'll hit it right on the head. I mean, last week we were in the ballpark, right? I had us by 3. I don't remember even what my score prediction was. I think it was 30-27. It ended up being 34-31. So we were right there in the ballpark. We were just off by a few points. So today, let's dive into it. We're actually going to start off with this Buffalo Bills defense first, and then we'll go to the offensive side of the ball. Of course, as always, let's start with the run game. Statistically speaking, it's not great this year. 4.6 yards per carry, that's 26th. 123 yards per game, that's 19th. But they are 8th in expected points added through their run defense, which is really solid. And I think when you watch this front, this is a team that's pretty opportunistic with some of the defensive front players that they have, but also it's the secondary pieces, as I touched on. I know the LA Rams found some success, though it wasn't the most efficient. They did have stretches of really nice runs. It is important to keep in mind that the LA Rams run the football pretty darn well. Like, that's been the new thing for LA, especially with all the downhill and the duo runs and the way that they set it up to kind of take edge defenders out of the play. I think they had a really good plan for some of those runs that really popped against Buffalo. So just keep that in mind. It wasn't like a terrible team ran the ball with some success. LA Rams can run the football, so that's a tough challenge anyway. And I think when you look at this defense, we start off with that defensive line first. Immediately for the run, I go to Ed Oliver, because as much of a problem as he is as a pass rusher, I do think run defense is clearly a spot where he can be had at the point of attack. Now, I think a lot of times comes back on cutback runs, specifically because he's sitting into that 3 technique, comes back on cutback runs if you're going, say, towards the weak side and you're cutting back onto Ed Oliver and you're able to get 2 hands on him, you're able to create combination blocks and really push him out of the play, you can find success there. But Ed, of course, can get into the backfield and disrupt them things. Next to him, I think it's also a little bit shaky, though Daquan Jones, I really like Daquan Jones during the offseason process. I think he's a really nice nose tackle. He's a little bit rotational in there. But when Austin Johnson steps in the game, I think arguably probably the most inconsistent run defender I think that I've seen. Not to say he's awful. I think he's their most inconsistent run defender at nose tackle. Austin Johnson is, so I love going at him as well. But again, Daquan Jones is probably the player to watch within the interior defensive line that I don't feel like is outstanding outside of what they can do as pressure pieces, because Daquan can get after it as well, but I don't think they're outstanding against the run. And then you get to that edge defender position, and this is where we start to get the styles of runs. But of course, you still have Von Miller, you have Gregory Rousseau, Casey Toohill that could be back this week that stepped in and played pretty well. I mean, they've went into Quentin Jefferson a little bit, who's definitely a player that can create some negatives. He's a big body as an edge defender, all the way to AJ Epinesa, who will get his snaps as well. And I think he's been a little bit more inconsistent there, but they definitely have names that we're all aware of at that edge defender position. And I think it's interesting because I think think they're really strong at that spot, but I think, as I touched on, LA did a really nice job of kind of minimizing the impact of the edge defenders while also still, in a way, kind of attacking them. So, specifically speaking, what kind of runs do I like against this team? I do think the stretch runs / outside zone runs can be effective. And last time the Lions played Buffalo, they were not afraid to kind of lean into the stretch runs, schematically speaking. I think I like using close splits to kind of wall off those edge defenders who aren't going to kick outside of your slot receivers, using close splits with receivers or with tight ends in line to potentially have an opportunity to wall off those end defenders, kind of take them out of the play a little bit in those stretch runs, and then work up to that second level specifically. So I do like using that offensively in this game, whether that's tight ends or receivers. And I really like the outside zone runs, especially with Taylor Decker back in this game, because I think you could put their interior guys a little bit more into the mix here. You can find a lot more consistency with the outside zone runs, and then it's just about handling those edge defenders at the point of attack, which they can be slippery. But I think with Taylor Decker and Penei Sewell back, I do like the matchups for the most part, how that would play out through the game. Gregory Rousseau would actually probably be the guy at circle there. However, the guy that actually pops the most, I think, on pure inside runs, surprisingly enough, is Von Miller. He's the guy that seemingly creates negatives, and he's the guy that's making the plays when inside runs are the case, and he's able to just crash downhill and find a way to be slippery, get underneath pads, and make a tackle. Von Miller is actually the guy that I circle in those spots. But if you are going to go those inside zone runs, I do like working specifically right at Ed Oliver at the point of attack. If you're going outside, I think you can work away from him. You can set up those cutback lanes. And the Lions have been leaning much heavier into the zone rushing scheme. I mean, they can do both, gap scheme, zone rushing, but I think they've leaned more towards zone. So I would expect that's where they lean once again in this game. Now, we did see, as I touched on, the LA Rams have the duo scheme, and I thought it was a great look because they would have their tight end in motion at the snap. They would basically cut out the edge defender, and they double team right down on their nose tackle and trust those combination blocks. It's kind of who they are, though, with Kevin Dotson and some of the bigger bodies on the interior. But I also like that methods potentially with split zone runs as well, because you could do that on outside zone plays. You can cut off that backside edge defender with outside zone runs with a tight end specifically, and then again, get the interior more into the mix. So I think both of those could work. And here's the thing. With this linebacker core, Matt Milano is now back in the mix, in for Dorian, who I think was, from what I've seen, specifically against a team like Kansas City, was picked on a little bit in coverage. Matt Milano, I think, shores a lot of that up, and he could definitely make plays, and he still flashes like that was great. But I think that as a whole, that linebacker position, that's typically in a nickel defense, because this is not a team that really matches personnel at all. You come out there and jumbo package like Kansas City did, they're still going to be in nickel. They're going to have two backers, 4 down linemen, and they're going to have Teron Johnson in the game to play the run. So that's just kind of who they are. I do think that linebacking core between Bernard and now Matt Milano, they definitely do miss tackles, and I don't think they're fantastic at consistently getting off of blocks. So I do think that there can be real success if you are able to get up to the second level specifically, but also I think our running backs can just make those guys miss at times. It's actually the defensive backs like Johnson and the safeties working downhill and the cornerbacks when they blitz off the edge, those guys that create negatives and go low because the runners, and we saw like last week there was a stop from Green Bay. They went low on Montgomery and he got kind of tripped up. He didn't make the one guy miss. Those are the guys that concern me a little bit more than even the linebackers, to be honest with you. So I think there's a real path for success here. I would also look for more power in the gap scheme once we get into those short yardage situations, because this is a team that, aggressively speaking, will tend to kind of press up on gaps. So at that point, you can down block and kick off of that and find success by leaning on those power runs. And you know me, I love Jahmyr Gibbs when he has a lead block to follow.
And for example, attacking these linebackers here, you get this jet motion tied along with the pin pull look. So you take out the edge in Russo, and you can see how it holds the linebacker's eyes, and then you're running towards Teron Johnson. Again, they're nickel on this play.
I think a lot of things set up for both running backs to have success in this game, but I could really see how you could look at this and say, man, look at Jahmyr Gibbs. If you have a guy that can make guys miss, and they're playing well in the zone scheme, which typically I lead to Monty there because I think he's way more efficient, regardless, I think both of those guys could find a way to make guys miss at that second level and potentially turn these into massive runs. So I see a real path to having success rushing the football. And because they're not going to be matching personnel, you can run with multiple tight ends on the field. You can put a tight end on an edge defender and then also allow him to try to get onto those nickel defender, which I love our tight ends in run blocking. Sam Laporta. I mean, we saw last week, Shane Zylstra, Brock Wright. The Lions could simplify. Man, we're going 13 personnel. You're going to sit nickel. Great. We trust our tight ends to handle that matchup. Now, that's not a slight at Buffalo. I'm sure every team would have that idea when you see a team that doesn't match personnel. They've done well against it. But I, as a Lions fan, really like the way that our tight ends block, so I actually really like that matchup for us in this game specifically. The other thing I would keep an eye on is definitely the utilization of jet runs. Now, we've seen teams have end arounds. We saw like the little reverse kind of look from the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that the use of jet run, specifically once you get into more like rundown situations, you get into the red zone, the Rams did this a ton, I think they're very effective. I thought AJ and Vanessa struggled at times to deal with that. Their edge defenders definitely want to get upfield when they feel it's more of like a rundown spot and the field gets condensed. Use jet runs, get right around those edge defenders, and also slow down their pursuit if you are going to try to have more success by going through the interior against this team. Their defensive backs are great in run support, but utilization of screens are not a bad look in this game, whether that's wide receiver screens, tunnel screens, running back screens, tight end screens. Utilizing screens, to me, find success because blockers can get up to these DBs. It's when they're clean and when they're flashing downhill is where they're really supportive. But if you can get up to block those guys, you can have real success by just outmatching them at the point of attack, and that's why I think the Rams had so much success, because they constantly put them into those spots. Now, when you talk about this pass defense, statistically, it's really strong. Top half in the league for the most part, 18 touchdowns, 13 picks, a sub-90 pass rating, essentially a 90 pass rating. They are allowing a high completion percentage at 69%, but they are ninth in terms of adjusted yards per attempt at 6.4, so they're not constantly giving up the big play, which is huge for this defense. From what I've seen, we go into what I've seen tendency-wise from this team, from the games that I've went through. I think on first down, they're definitely a heavy cover 3 type of team that will rotate into some 2 deep looks, Tampa 2, quarters coverage, but they're definitely a heavy cover 3 team. I think it fits their personnel. Christian Benford, I think he's one of my favorite cornerbacks to watch in cover 3 because he cheats off of routes. He'll kind of peek back inside. You can't just run a cover 3 beater and expect him not to be there. He's going to kind of read out and diagnose it from that look where he can sit on top of a route, where, again, he may not be the most athletic piece, but he's very good when he's in those spots, and he has a very good ability to read throughout route concepts and how he's trying to be attacked. So for me, the cover 3 defensively is the majority of what they play. Now, I do think that they have aggressive cornerback play. Without Rasul Douglas, I'm interested to see how this plays out. One of the toughest challenges I always thought of playing Green Bay was their cover 3 defense, and specifically Rasul Douglas, because he was aggressive, he's willing to overlap zone coverage, he's willing to play outside of what the expectation was. So if you ran something to clear him out and he just decided not to, that was on the table, and he could jump routes, and I've already seen it this year. With him not in the game, that may change some things, and I think for us it helps us because we won't get as much unpredictability from that spot. But that being said, Jamarcus Ingram does have a pick 6 so far this season, so I think it's important to also throw that out there. But I like with this aggressive cornerback play, I like early trying to throw them on their heels. I love an idea of an early double move, maybe a slot fade, that way you can hold kind of those outside cornerbacks. I'd love something early to just give them the sense of like, okay, we can't kind of just cheat underneath on these type of routes, because I got to assume every team coming to play us, if we're going to play cover 3, guys, we're going to jump one of these routes, right? The Lions are not going to be taking shots left and right against us. They want to find the spacing windows underneath. We're going to jump one of these. So if I'm the Lions, I'm saying we're pressing them early in this game. We're going to see if we can connect on it, because I think we can. I think we have matchups that can do it, especially Jamison Williams, maybe even Tim Patrick. But I would love to see the Lions early in this game say, you know what, first down, we're going to press you back a little bit just to kind of get you on your heels a little bit. And I think that would be fantastic. So, of course, love the idea of flooding half the field. I think that finds a lot of success. One guy that stands out to me in those cover 3 looks specifically is a guy like Taylor Rapp. If he does play in this game, I think he could be a little bit late, specifically getting over in zone coverage. We saw it against the Ram when he gave up the seam touchdown to Cooper Kupp, just kind of being a little bit late to roll, too high pre-snap. They roll at the snap. He has to go to that post spot, and he ends up giving up the seam touch. He can't get over there in time, and it's just a straight spot drop, so they're giving up the seam route. So I like trying to get him into the mix. I even think to the point where with these safeties, I like half rolls. I like the idea of, we saw Kansas City do this against a 2 deep look, a half roll, kind of pulled him out of the play. They took the shot to Worthy. Worthy just didn't get his feet down, but he was wide open. I love the idea of kind of going at these safeties into this game and putting some stress on them from cover 3 specifically. They tend to kind of buzz their coverage as well. That's kind of the tendency that I see. And when you do that, rather than running your safety into, a sky roll, you're asking those players, especially from like condensed splits, to then bump outside at the snap if they're not going to just be settled in there, which they're probably not, which to me allows for opportunity for fast motion, speed out routes. That's Jameson. We don't have Khalif, unfortunately. St. Brown, where you have him on one side, fast motion across at the snap, you break him on a quick outbreaker, and you're forcing that flat defender to bump over at the snap and have to react to it, and it gives you some spacing. And the Lions did that last time they played Buffalo. I would look for the Lions to try that again in this one to force them to kind of bump over into the flat. It comes to their cover 1 defensively, because they will play man coverage, and I think it's one of the things that are somewhat similar to us is that on third down, they're not afraid of just going single high safety and trusting their guys one-on-one. And as I said this week, I think it's the most underrated element of this Buffalo team is simply that they have a very well-rounded secondary. Now, I think that changes massively when you don't have Rasul Douglas, but to be honest with you, if Rasul Douglas was playing and he said, what matchup do you like to go at, I would have said Rasul Douglas. I think this season he's been the most consistent in man coverage out of all those guys. So I just pointed out between Benford and Johnson, those guys are great. I think he's been the most consistent. They did really well against the LA Rams, so it showed what they were really capable of. This is a team that is willing to sit in those spots, and this is one of the reasons I think it's a big challenge for Ben is can he find a way to get guys open? Who steps up and just simply goes and wins? Is that Sam Laporta? Who finds a way to just beat their guy one-on-one? And as I touched on, I love the idea of Tim Patrick matched up one-on-one with a guy like Ingram on the ball, cover one spots where they're like single him up and he could just beat him off the line with his great release. Of course, I like Benford on JMO because I think JMO, you want to lead into those over-breaking routes. I don't want Jamison working comebacks or deep curls. The man coverage looks, that's where he thrives. He thrives at sitting down with routes and being very physical at the top of the route. So I don't want Jamison trying to battle that. I'd rather him just make Christian Benford chase him in coverage, which is probably the biggest negative of his game. One thing I think we'll see from the Lions in this one, I definitely could see this, is some heavy personnel. And if whatever matchup they like, if that's put Laporta out wide, if that's single side receiver, we'll go 3-by-1. We want St. Brown on the single side, get him one-on-one. We saw the Lions do this against the Rams last year in the playoffs, and we'll run routes with that guy. St. Brown feels like he is definitely the best matchup piece for anybody that they decide to throw. If they throw Benford over there, if they throw Ingram over there, put St. Brown because he'll beat you off the line of scrimmage. He deals with physicality well, and he has that ability in contested situations to just come down with football, even though he's a little undersized. Wouldn't shock me if the Lions said, we're going to go 3-by-1. We're going to set up a side of the field where we can either throw a screen, which works against this team. We can flood that side of the field, so we're going to cheat you over there, and we're going to create a straight one-on-one because if it's cover 3 or cover 1, he's got to deal with this, and we're going to let St. Brown go to work. It wouldn't shock me at all if the Lions utilize that look a couple of times to try to single up St. Brown regardless of who they want to throw over there. But again, I love the over routes for JMO in this game. I don't want him sinking down. I want him flying through his routes, making guys chase him this week specifically. Now, when they go to more of those 2 deep looks specifically, those cover 2 looks, I think you want to work in front of the safeties. I don't love their safety position in coverage specifically. We'll see if they prove me wrong, but that doesn't even have to do with the health. Even if their starters are there, I think that if you're looking for straight matchups, in zone coverage because everybody's on the table at that point. I do like the idea of working in front of these safeties. We saw last week with Jameson Williams where he got off the line of scrimmage, ran the little deep corner route, and all of a sudden they had a flat. They pulled down the cornerback and they hit him in front of the safety. Things like that I think could be very successful. I think that's the spot where you can find success is working in front of those safeties on the sideline. And we got guys that timing-wise will get their feet down outside of a guy like Xavier Worthy who just didn't get his feet down when he had the opportunity to do so. Again, level 2, I like going at Matt Milano in this game. He hasn't been fantastic from what I've seen so far, but he definitely shows like, okay, this is probably better than when Dorian's out here. I thought he was just attacked, and I thought you saw Kansas City, I mean, they were using beneath routes. They were making that guy deal with play action, then he'd have to go chase something. That's something the Lions could do, but I think it'll be better with Matt Milano in this game. But I do still like going at that piece specifically. And then the final little matchup I'd circle is Cam Lewis. Sub packages, especially now with the injuries, maybe we see him a little bit more. He comes in on sub packages, obvious pass downs. He typically rolls into the slot. Whoever's on Cam Lewis, look to that guy. If you can get Cam Lewis on the field, throw it to that guy. I would just say that's one of those matchups that I do think that you'll like. Now, when you get to these second down situations, I know we just rolled through different coverage looks, so that's not just first down, but just in general, that's what I'm looking at for coverage types. On second down and long, I do see that this team tends to blitz a little bit more. I don't know that they, did that a ton against us last time. I felt they went a little bit more quarters defensively last time we faced this team.
And in these quarters looks, you can see the opening into that second level behind the linebackers in front of these safeties, similar to the 2 deep looks, even though the ball doesn't go here. They try to take these one-on-one shots on these out routes just like this, and you can see how well Benford reads that, so maybe stay away from him, but it also opens the door to attack backers with some underneath throws, let Tim Patrick work after the catch.
But they do seemingly blitz a little bit more, and I think so much of that is when it's 2nd and 6+, is that they're really hyper-focused on we're stopping the run. And I think for the Lions in this one, just a side note, if it's 3rd and long, you have to have in the back of your mind we're going for it on 4th and 4 and be willing to take the check down. If it's 3rd and 12 and you're in a spot where you're like, we could go for it on 4th if it's close enough, take the check down and make it 4th and 4 because it's going to be difficult to get to those spots because they truly will spot drop onto the sticks underneath coverage. So they'll give you the check down and they'll make you go from there, which is where screens can open up, of course. But it's also like, hey, there can be some real 4-down territory situations if you fall behind the chains early that you just have that in the back of your mind. Like, we don't need the sticks on 3rd down. I do think when you're backed up, there's more blitzing. I also do see majority of the time that cover one-on-one coverage, but also cover 4 against us specifically when they went to more of those 2 deep looks in those spots. I like number 1 because it's blitzing more, but I really like the idea of screens here. I don't love rushing in these spots. Typically it's 2nd and 7. You're like, just run the ball. We'll get, we'll get 5 yards because they're all going to be backed up. I don't actually love it because I think they're very aggressive. So for me, instead, I actually like the idea of running screens in that spot or potentially end arounds and, things that are kind of moving you side to side. I like that a little bit more because instead of just getting buried against the run because they jump it and they all blitz, set up a screen out of it. Because number one, either they're going to have too deep and they're going to give you space, or they're either going to come at you and that gives you opportunity to get out there and create a big play because they're aggressive in those spots.
And if it is second and long and you are thinking run, I don't think it's a bad time to also kind of lean into moving the pocket for golf. Bootlegs, design rollouts out of the gun, move the pocket where it's a little bit lighter in coverage because they're in some of these quarters looks. They only have one underneath defender, so you can kind of layer it or potentially, again, attack a blitz with left defenders underneath. I like moving the pocket as well. Screens, end arounds, or also just moving the pocket.
So whether that's trying to get wide on the run or utilize screens, I like both of those. And then when it gets to third down, if it's third down and medium to short, 3rd and 5 or less specifically, I think, again, cover one is kind of the go-to for them here, and you'll get variations. It doesn't mean cover one blitz or cover one robber all the time. Like, they'll do cover one rats, right? They'll drop 2 rats into cover. So there's variations of cover one, but it's simply a lot of times going to be straight man-to-man coverage. We'll also jump into some, like cover 2 looks in these spots, drop into it. I do think that opens the opportunity to potentially create shot plays. I do think that does on 3rd and short. Like, I think you can open up potential shot plays where if your pass protection's there, you're thinking 4-down territory, don't be afraid. Remember last time we played this team, we took a shot to DJ Chark and we ended up having to kick the field goal. I think we kicked the field goal. On 3rd and long specifically, I see a lot more zone coverage. Now, I will say the thing to watch for specifically for me is that this is a team that'll play a lot of show man and drop in a zone. They don't seemingly do a lot of like straight zero coverage, but they will show man and then they'll drop into zone coverage and break out of those spots. I think you get more zone when you get to those spots specifically, which is like, hey, they're going to play the sticks, be willing to play 4-down territory. It's also a big reason why you want to avoid 4th and forever or 3rd and forever because it's going to be hard to pick that up. I wouldn't be against running some like middle field screens where you run a drag and have everybody kind of lead block and you try to get upfield on those just to be safe, especially if you're willing to play 4-down territory. We did it sometimes against Green Bay last week where it's like, hey, we'll just take the tunnel screen and we'll see how close we can get and then we go for it. I don't have any issue with doing that once again in this game. Going to those cover 6 and even cover 3 looks where they're kind of dropping out, those little screens underneath can be effective, but the show man drop to zone is a thing that I would circle here because they definitely do that.
Okay, now I want to showcase a couple specifics about their coverages. So here is one of these cover 3 looks. Now this time they're going sky coverage with their safety. But notice how when you flood one side of the field, they take away the flash. They play hard flash, and it opens up that huge space where Benford is going to give up a lot of ground to Tutu Atwell, which you would to JMO as well, and that big opening they allow. Here in a buzz cover 3, similarly, they take away the flats aggressively, and it opens up kind of this corner route, this time in front of Rasul Douglas. So both cover 3 routes, they're going to give you that. And then back to the 2nd and long situation where it's like, hey, they'll be aggressive. You see their edge defenders get upfield, but notice how here they're giving you like a cover 6 locked look to the single side receiver. They're just going to man him up one-on-one, but keep that safety deep over top. There is not much help or support underneath. So they're giving you the underneath looks to kind of eat away at the yards, but they're not going to give you the big play.
Owing man, and they're kind of stacking everybody up on the line. They're probably dropping at the zone. It's probably cover 2 or cover 3. I've seen cover 3 last time we played them. I've seen cover 2 a lot this season. Tampa 2, cover 2. You kind of just have to expect that that's what you're going to get in coverage rather than straight man coverage if they're kind of just like selling out the show like, oh, we're going 0 here. And it's like, yeah, you're probably not. You're probably going to zone. So just keep that in mind. And then finally, when I think you get to these red zone situations or goal line situations, you get a couple different things. In goal line situations, you get more goal line straight man looks. So, of course, you can get your one-on-one matchups there. You can try to create rubs out of it if you want to. And then also when you get inside the 10, I think you'll get more kind of your throwback like red zone cover 2 where guys will kind of just, they'll kind of float between cover 4 and cover 2. They'll kind of play the back of the end zone. They're not going to give you the deep corner. So it allows for checkdowns, especially early. And then when you're inside the 20, they're going to go a little bit more cover 3. So the seams can open up. Screens were very effective. We saw that for the Rams. They'll go more cover 3 in those spots. The pressure pieces I'd keep my eye on for this game is Ed Oliver, play action sets. That's where he seemingly is his most dangerous, playing the run to playing the pass. And I think that's actually his most effective trait. The other guy for sure is Gregory Rousseau. He's got 50 pressures on the season. The guy is a dog. It's a great week to get our tackles back, but that guy's outstanding. So yeah, he's the other guy to watch for in those spots specifically. They are allowing the 26th highest third down conversion rate at 43% and 54% in the red zone, which is middle of the pack in football this season. I think a big part is keeping it very third and manageable, though, against this team, because otherwise they're going to be settling in on those sticks. So you keep it third and manageable, and you can see that you can absolutely pick those up. Now let's flip to the other side, and we'll talk about this Bills offense, because, again, this all really starts and ends with Josh Allen. And the weird thing is the first game I went through was L.A., and I came out of that like, man, I didn't even think they played that well, and they scored 40 points. Like, so much of this was like everything is third and long. They don't run the football at all, but Josh Allen just keeps taking off and making these ridiculous plays, and you're like, well, okay, that kind of saved the drive. He just did that left and right. Now, that's not who they want to be. Clearly, this is a team that averages 4.5 yards per carry. That's ninth, and I think Allen helps that. 125.7 yards per game. That's 11th. Fourth in expected points added through the run in the NFL. That's better than us. That is the key, first and foremost, is stop the run. And I think last time we played the Bills, we did a really nice job on early downs of shutting that thing down. Stop the run first and foremost. The talk's going to be about Josh Allen. I don't think this team at all wants to be a drop-back passing team. I think they're capable, clearly, because Allen does so many ridiculous things that even if it's not there, you can still make something happen. But if that's where they have to live, that's not their comfort zone. That's not who they want to be, even with Keon Coleman back. They want to run the football and find efficiency. Stop the run first. For me, you do see a lot of jumbo packages on first downs. I think it's kind of an expansion. I think we're going to see a lot of expansion of the run game through screens. We'll call those kind of the same things because I think we're going to do pretty well stopping the run. But one thing that they do well is they get the running backs very involved in the pass game. Ty Johnson's been a huge piece there. James Cook, of course, he can make things happen out in space. So they use them a lot in the run game. They expand their run game through the screens a lot. So stopping the run first and foremost is everything. Our cornerbacks tackled really well last time we played this team. They kind of shut things down out wide. But you can also kind of tell sometimes by their O-line splits where the runs are seemingly going to go just because of how the linemen will line up. Like they don't have maybe the most athletic offensive line, and you'll see that in kind of some of the run style as well. But, like, O'Cyrus Torrence will literally cheat to where he's going on the play, and they'll lean behind that right side of the offensive line a ton, behind Spencer Brown and O'Cyrus Torrence, who was the second-round pick. They'll lean behind those two guys. I think they run a lot more towards the right side than the left side when they're trying to run the football, and you can see that's clearly the spot they want to get to. When they haven't had that piece, we've seen it in the past where they had a backup right tackle, and it's like, oh, this doesn't look the same. That's where they want to run the football. And for the Lions, I think last time we saw us play this team, early down blitzing in the sense of zone blitzing was effective. Slot blitzing, slanting gaps, those kind of things are effective. Regardless, it's a great week to have our defensive line healthy to help stop the run. I think on the left side, center, I think they're a little bit more average. I think David Edwards is a little bit more average at left guard. I think the right side is clearly their strength of this team.
And this is what made the Bills' offense so impressive. They were constantly in third and long against the Rams. They just picked them up way more often than they should have. Definitely playing over the expected outcome of these certain situations they were put into. And a lot of it's through Josh Allen just creating. I don't think this is an excellent pass protection unit, but I think they get minimized the much stress that puts on them. One, because they're trying to run the ball more, and two, because they're not constantly a drop back passing team that doesn't have a quarterback that can do things like this. So here when you're like this kind of cover six look where you're like matching the seam, you take everything away, but all of a sudden you don't plaster your route and Allen starts to step up and everybody's like, oh snap, he's running, and all of a sudden he gets somebody open because of that. That's just Allen creating something that's literally not there, but it's now there because he can move. The discipline has to be there.
The types of runs to look for. When they get into the red zone, duo runs, downhill, strong double teams, left or right, but strong double teams at the point of attack. They'll lean on kind of their tight ends. A lot of tight ends will come in, and again, you'll utilize that jumbo package in those spots. If they go to empty, probably expect a quarterback run. Probably expect a design run, not just scramble. It's quarterback power, quarterback draw. If they're going empty, I would say there's a very legitimate chance, especially if it's second down, that he's going to take off and run, and that it's by design that he's going to run. Their base run, to me, was outside zone a majority of the time. I think Aleem McNeil has to have a big game. DJ Reader, of course, has to have a big game. I think these guys are built for that really well, but this is going to be a lot of outside zone. It's a lot of we're going to move you off your spot. We're going to combination, and we're going to push guys around. That's the base. That's who they are as a run team. They can create chunks out of it. Delvin Cook's comfortable there. So all of those guys are going to constantly be in battle. Now, of course, that's where slot blitzing becomes effective because you blitz the slot, you slant down gaps, you create negatives. Some teams lag behind. Some teams like Lions will just handle it at the point of attack and be like, yeah, you're not moving us around. I think that's where the blitzing can open up. Now, I will point out, though, the downside to that is simply the RPO usage and the screen flats that they'll run. They utilize that a lot, and I think against us, we saw it against Kansas City because they're a blitzing team as well. They're going to come out with that in the back of their mind, like RPOs might be pretty effective in this game into the flat. Usually, I've always seen it out of 3-by-1 sets with a tight end in line on the one single side receiver side. There's no receiver. It's actually just a tight end. They'll go like an inside or outside zone, and they'll have those three receivers set up a flat, a lot of times to Curtis Samuel, so that'll be their response. If we're blitzing that slot, Curtis Samuel's probably going to get the football. Safety stepping down for run support. I would also say in those spots, if they come out 3-by-1 and they're expecting us to blitz and we're not going to, we may not do this often, but I wouldn't hate the idea of like hey, we drop the edge into the flat and we blitz a slot. That we can still try to fill that gap and press it back inside, but the edge rusher's just kind of standing in the way. Or just have your outside cornerback jump it and show like, hey, we're going single high, it's cover 3, and then go cover 2 and have that outside corner just drive on it. Something along those lines to blow up one of those plays. I think the opportunity's there because I think it's one of the more predictable plays through the sets. Doesn't mean they always do when they go 3-by-1 with an inline tight end, but I think it's a little bit more predictable. They'll kind of stack the two slots and they'll put one out wide. I think it's a little bit more predictable where you could potentially have an opportunity to jump run of those. They also utilize those stretch runs for sure to get wide, stretch toss plays, just stretch runs in general. I think it's because of the speed that they have in the backfield. You know, when you have Cook and you also have Ty Johnson who can absolutely fly, it makes sense that they kind of lean into that offensively. And then, of course, they'll utilize some of their power run scheme, which can come with the quarterback, but also counter runs as well. I think it's also when it's short yard situations, you'll get quarterback sneaks. If it's 3rd and 1, you're probably getting a quarterback sneak. If they need a yard, you're probably getting a quarterback sneak. No surprise there. Can he stop it? Probably not, but that's likely what it's going to be.
So I tend to see a path for Jamal Adams to play a little bit more in this game, especially on first downs where he can blitz and he can be the slot blitzer that slants gaps against these zone runs. But when they do go heavy personnel, like the jumbo set or just with multiple tight ends and they're trying to get our backers on the field, this is the opportunity for whether that's Ben Neiman, but specifically Quan Alexander, maybe some David Long. Like these guys to scrape speed, get over top. I know what Jack Campbell's going to be, but especially a guy like Quan, who's patient but can definitely fly sideline to sideline just like David Long. Those guys making the play because our edge defenders are really just going to have to contain here, get on top of blocks. But I want those guys on the backside to be flying over, making plays, slithering around these offensive linemen that aren't the most athletic trying to get it to the second level. Those guys shining in these spots. But also, this is exactly why I like Jamal Adams with more snaps, because I can blitz him off the slot, drop him in his zone coverage, but then also, because I love him in underneath zone, I think that's where he's at his best, but then I can also match him with the tight end if they are going heavy personnel. You see a lot of these strong side runs, which is going to put Mike more in the full Jack Campbell, rather than that Will Backer at times to even give them an opportunity to actually make a play. So Jack Campbell, who I don't think maybe that's his best trade, is just getting sideline to sideline and working over top of blocks. That's where a guy like Jamal's ability to slot blitz, slant things back inside, create disruption. It would make so much sense to utilize him in a game like this. And then again, I love the matchup, but he'll play the run like a backer. So look for a lot of Jamal.
But again, the RPOs is what I'm focusing on specifically here. And then now we get to this passing attack. And it's very difficult because, again, so many things are unpredictable with Allen. But I will say this, just a quick little note, just to get this thing started. Keep an eye on the Lions trying to force Josh Allen to potentially roll right. You know, I think in general you think like, oh, yeah, push him left. He's right-handed. But he tends to run a lot when he gets to his left. So maybe that's because he's not as comfortable throwing that way. Or maybe it's just like he likes to run left. Regardless, when he's scrambling, a lot of times it's big plays towards the left side, probably because he doesn't want to throw across his body as much, potentially try to kind of push him to one side of the field, similar to what they did with Justin Fields, where they would bring slot blitzes and try to push him off and kind of cut the field in half for him a little bit there as well. With this offense, similarly, there's a lot of half-field play-action setups, combinations out of half-field looks, not always a ton of routes on the field. I don't love comparing this team to the Colts because they're much better, but I think there's some similarities where it's not always like the deepest like route trees on the field, but instead it's like we're going to create explosives, we're going to take shots if we get a one-on-one opportunity, and there's going to be no questions about it. And Josh Allen's going to make that throw. Like, a lot of times when I watch him, it's just that simple. Like, if you're giving him a single-eye look and if it's third down, he's probably taking that shot one-on-one on the sideline. It's like it doesn't matter if you have a guy there. I'm taking a shot. So it's like it doesn't matter what you play. The ball's going there. Can he make a play on it? And it's Amari Cooper, and they've allowed him to just kind of take off and flourish in that role. And now, of course, throwing Keon Coleman. Now, as a side note, I love the matchups for us. If you wanted me to put a type of great receiver on Carlton Davis, like what great receiver I think Carlton could play well against, I would say, yeah, Amari Cooper, especially because I don't think his route tree is the most diverse. I mean, you'll see like double moves, but I don't think there's a lot of like consistent in-breakers or underneath level 1 targets. I think it's a lot more of like vertical shots. So I think that's a good matchup for him. I think the same thing about Terrion. I love that matchup for him against Keon Coleman. I know Keon's very physical. I thought he was a good route runner in college. Not great. I thought he was a good route runner. I thought he was a good player. But I love that matchup for Terrion. He is an excellent player at the catch point. So for me, I like the matchups just in general out wide. Of course, Khalil Shakir kind of becomes the player to watch there. And that may end up being the case in this game with Amik Robertson. That may be the thing to watch. And we're going to talk about that more here in a second. So on first down, I think we're going to see some real zone blitzing for the Lions in this game. That's going to help them against the run, with the RPOs being the key out of that. I think quarters on early downs is perfectly fine. You can kind of bring your safeties up. It'll help you stop the run if you need that help. It also helps kind of take away the middle of the field, where this is a team that runs a lot of drive concepts. If you're in cover 3, they have a lot of kind of the mesh or just kind of like the drag with a little overball that settles down right behind it. They have that setup kind of over and over. So you can kind of squeeze the middle of the field with some of those quarters looks with some more aggressive safety play, and it still leaves you one-on-one on the outside, kind of on an island. Now, the downside of that is they're going to take that shot, so probably not the best game to play a ton of palms coverage, but it's still one-on-one. So regardless, in a lot of single high coverages, you're still getting a one-on-one anyway. So I don't think cover 4 is bad. And I also think Tampa 2 is a little bit safer. Cover 4 has gotten teams into trouble because this team will adapt. They'll find beaters if you just sit in the same coverage by every down all game. I think Tampa 2 is a little bit safer because, again, you can really protect on the outsides. You can also have your cornerbacks kind of drift back and take away some of the times where they'll try to flood an outside setup, and you can force the checkdowns while also still kind of making the middle field a little bit like mucky and murky. Like, I don't really know if I want to throw the ball there. You can make it a little bit more like that against Allen outside of a broken play. So I think it's much safer. You'll really eliminate explosives. And when I watch Josh Allen, as great as he is, if there is a spot that I think that there's inconsistency, it's finding reads. Like, I think he could be inconsistent at finding reads on time, be a little bit late. You'll kind of watch him like, okay, he's waiting for this to open up, it doesn't. And this guy was open for a while, and he was just late to find the route. I think that's truly an aspect, and I think truly off of that, disguising coverage is effective against this team. There's no shame in disguising coverage and thinking that could work. I think it absolutely can work. I think rolling safety should be constantly in play in this game, and I think early down zone coverage with a blitz is perfectly fine. Looking along, as I touched on, disguise coverage absolutely works. Last time we played this team, we saw some inverted coverage. That can be effective against this team where it's like, hey, cornerbacks go to safety, safeties roll down into that underneath zone coverage spot. I think that's effective, but I would roll safeties often on first and second down. I think he's a little bit late to throw when that is the case. Now, cover 1, again, that's who we are. We'll talk about this more with third down, but you just have to keep in mind, if you do make it clear like we're playing cover 1, he's looking for the run. Like, he's looking for the opportunity to take off. Versus zone where he can take off, versus single high man, he is looking for the opportunity to take off. And I think that's a huge difference because against some of the zone, he may kind of play the in-between game. It's man, as soon as that window opens up, he's taking off, and he'll take advantage of that immediately. We saw the last time we played him. We went to man coverage like the first time, and boom, he took off for like 30 yards. And I was like, yep, he's just kind of looking for that window. That doesn't mean because you play man, you can't keep him in the pocket, because he can, back to rush lane integrity. But if you don't, he's looking for that opportunity to take off. So I think that's important to look for. So we get to these third down spots, and I think what the Lions did last time, what I've seen a lot of teams do, they play kind of the cover 1, but they have the robber safety, so they try to settle in the middle of the field. I think it's a great coverage to run, mainly because Khalil Shakir then can be taken away over the middle of the field much better. And a lot of times when he goes middle of the field, that's the guy who he's looking for, is simply Khalil Shakir. Now, that could change with Kincaid, but that's typically where they like to look. So if you can kind of make the middle of the field a little bit cloudy by doing that and force him more to the sidelines, it's going to be more clear and cut, like he's going to take the shot on the sideline, who wins one-on-one. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Lions like, you know what, we'll take that challenge. That's what we invested in. We like our guys. Let's run it. And if that's what Lions do, I'm not even mad at them for doing it. I just think that's how they'll probably play it. Now, I don't hate the idea of going two-man because of that, because then I can press everybody underneath. I can have two deep safeties that roll, and we can play it. We don't have to be just, say, play half field. We can cheat one way or the other, but we can kind of play that two-man and press and stay over top of those vertical outside shots and kind of force everything to the middle. But I think those throws are just much more consistent from a percentage standpoint if you have a one-on-one with Khalil Shakir and you don't have any safety help. Also, when the Lions utilize a robber safety and go single high and they roll one safety down, last year they were able to roll that safety to help on a specific player. So they can specifically say, we're going to play a robber, and he's going to run right in front of Khalil Shakir and pick that up, and then maybe we drop off it. Or he's going to step down and take away Amari Cooper, considering if he does like a deep curl and he doesn't go vertical. Like, you can do things like that if you do play a robber. So I think the Lions will probably lean into that. But that being said, Cooper and Hollins are the guys to watch. Now, I will say Keon Coleman's probably going to be the other guy, actually the guy instead of Hollins in this game. But then the Lions, again, they can kind of take it by that perspective of like, okay, if we play a cover one robber, we can kind of be like, hey, vertically, we want to have the safety shift over top of Amari Cooper. And then the underneath guy can kind of step down on Khalil Shakir, and then we leave our one-on-one with Keon Coleman and potentially Terry on saying that's the matchup, and that's what we're gonna go for. I don't think this team constantly beats you with a ton of like, man, we got all this mess, and it's like these guys are getting open. I think it's more so straight matchups. But if you are consistently just sitting in cover one, we have seen they're capable. They are capable. So you will have to rotate at times in this game on third down, go to some zone, because like we saw against Kansas City, if you're just sitting in man, they had like this weird like kind of bunch look, and they made it really messy for the defense, and they got a guy wide open. They're capable of doing it, and they probably expect the Lions are going to do it. So if the first time we see third down, the Lions drop in a zone, that may take away that threat a little bit more. But my thought just in general is, hey, cover one robber, safety help to whoever you want. Maybe you want the help on the number two, and you're like Carlton, you just stay with Amari Cooper, or the other way around, and then you can kind of roll down and take away Shakir, try to help on him over the middle of the field. Of course, then the concern is scrambling, which you're playing man coverage. That's always a concern, but it's honestly it's honestly a concern regardless. Kind of man or match coverage, that's going to be a concern. So that's just something that we really have to focus on up front. There's not much else to say rather than rush lane integrity. Get to like these third down looks from like these short yard situations. Again, I like the single high coverage. I like cover 3 in this one. I think the key is going to be in interior are getting pressure. I think winning from that spot, we have better matchups there. I don't love Torrance when they have to play a drop back passing attack. I don't love Evers. I think he's solid, but I think against Lee McNeil, I take that matchup all day long. So winning on the interior, I think our guys absolutely can. If you're going to, kind of like ET stunt and you're going to crash in, you're going to crash in Josh Pascal, that's fine too. Winning interior is key. I think that's where it opens up the most. Of course, though, you got to watch for him to take out. But you want him spill him this way rather than have him go this way. You want to spill him out wide if you're asking me to really try to cut that field in half rather than kind of spilling him upfield, because as soon as he gets out there, he's going to just take off, and then he's got everything in front of him to look for. And actually kind of goes to the conversation of zone coverage too. It's the same thing against zone. Like if you're playing zone, we talked about first down, second down. This is the you must plaster type of game. As soon as he moves and the pocket breaks and he starts to move, do not have your second level players ooh, let me go underneath. Dude, find the guy in coverage because he's going to move. You're going to move the coverage and he's going to find someone downfield. He has a ridiculous arm, so of course he can make all of those throws. And with the amount of those drive concepts where it's drag and it's in breaker right behind it. In long spots, again, I like the man coverage spots. They can find beaters, so you will have to rotate at times. And I also really like what I think a lot of teams have done, and this can be your rotation out of it, is the cover 3 look, so it's zone, but you blitz out of it. We saw Kansas City get an interception. I think those kind of looks are very effective because you can show one coverage and you can just drop into zone out of it directly. I think those are very effective on 3rd and long. We saw Kansas City have an interception going into that coverage on a 4th down where you kind of just floated it to nobody because they were passing everything off underneath specifically. I think it also kind of minimizes the want to take off because you get an extra rusher in the play with the 5 rushers, and then again, it's back into zone coverage, so you can have a little bit better eyes there, especially if you're not playing match coverage, just spot dropping because it's third down and long in those spots, and you're kind of just drifting back. Would not go cover 4 in those spots because I don't want just singled up receivers on the outside specifically because now I'm losing too many guys underneath already. I don't want to run cover 4. I'd rather run cover 2. That way I can have safety help over top. If it's third and long, just throwing that out there. Any kind of coverage. We saw the other Rams play cover 4. They matched out of it. Is that if you're going to play match coverage, which I don't think is a bad plan. We did it against the Green Bay Packers the first time. Match coverage is fine. It's just the fact that the quarterback can take off because it essentially turns into man coverage depending on how their route concept's set up. It works well to help cover down the field. It really takes away vertical shots.
And with a team like the Bills, who are now healthy with Kincaid and all of their receivers, they like to attack a lot vertically. So like here, they'll utilize their number 3 receiver to go vertical. Now the number 2 corner can drop off, take that vertically, and then you have your safety that can kind of roll over top, and you kind of just match up at the bottom. That's a quarter side kind of match look, and it does help take away the vertical threats. And they have all of their threats to attack vertically on the wheel routes, in the double moves, so it can be effective.
It also helps take away the middle of the field where if you're sitting in cover 3 and they kind of run the drag with the little overball route and they kind of settle in, they create those levels. They can find guys open if you're just spot dropping. But if you're matching it, you can kind of take those things away with the free safety being aggressive. The downside to that is, of course, that it opens up more opportunities to take off. And again, it stresses your defensive front a little bit more there. I think that Bills have done a good job this season of using more 2-man route concepts. And they've done a good job because of that, because they're able to kind of push, the outside cornerback vertical and set up easy curls. Like they're creating much more easy answers against cover 3 spot dropping this season so far. So match is fine. However, if you just sit in match coverage all game, just like if you sit in man all game and you're not rotating things, they will find beaters. And we saw against the Rams that 51-yard touchdown from Khalil Shakir. You're trying to match coverage, and they end up finding a beater for 51 yards because they utilize the little half roll from the quarterback to hold eyes and pull coverage, and he ended up scoring a touchdown on the play. So it works well, but we've seen this. We also saw the double move that they set up between their 2 inside receivers that they set up as well, whereas you're going to try to match coverage defensively, we can create a really big beater off of that because we understand how you're trying to play it. So you have to keep a rotation in play. But honestly, against this team, as much as I like match coverage and Alliance may say let's do that, if the rush line integrity is struggling, and it's struggling, in match, which is similar to man, but it's just zone but with match principles, if it's struggling in pattern matching, I would say just go spot drop, go zone coverage, spot dropping, early downs, and then on third downs, I have no issue with rotating some zone and man there. Have no issue with that whatsoever.
And it's not just the defensive line, it is specifically the back end. Discipline is the key word. All these run fakes and the threat of Josh Allen running and he starts to move the pocket, it tends to pull guys out of these zone covered spots that they're supposed to be in. So obviously the easiest way to simplify it is we're just going to play man coverage. Cover your guy. And the Lions may say we want to simplify this, play this thing fast. But discipline is everything regardless if it's the defensive line or the back end or both.
This is a team that on the outside, you're going to get go routes, you're going to get double moves, you're going to get deep curls. That's kind of who they are. If they're backed up, they're going to run deep curls. So those one-on-one matchups are massive. I tend to love our personnel in that spot with Carlton and with Terry. I think those guys play really well in those spots. I tend to like how we match up way better than the team, say, the LA Rams did. So in a lot of ways, I actually like the way that we match up with the team, with this team. And then again, the other concept that's heavily used is either like the mesh look or specifically the drives, where they're just trying to create levels against some of those two deep safeties looks. They're trying to create levels over into the field. And while match coverage and man can help take that away, the downside to that is he can take off a little bit more when that is the case. But it can also kind of muddy things up. And I think on first down, where they're trying to kind of stay into that more efficient kind of passing attack, I think that's fine to play zone in those spots, two deep safeties, that kind of thing. For me, I like matching in some ways. I think you saw the Rams, they had cover 4 match, and that was effective. I think cover 6 defensively works a lot as well, but you're essentially just giving them the check down, and they have that little like screen check down that the Packers run it. We saw, the LA Rams, I think it's Rams. I think the Niners run it as well, but they'll run that little like tight end will slide out, he'll lead block, and they'll check it down, and they just get less routes on the concept because they're just like, we'll just throw a screen check down. That's what I'm saying. This team doesn't always have the most routes actually on the field, and I don't think that Josh constantly makes every route an option. I think unless he breaks down the play, then everything becomes on the table. But within the play, I don't think everything is constantly an option. I think it's like, that's one-on-one I'm going to throw it, and I think it helps his pass protection a ton. And while cover 6, especially playing with the lead, is very valuable because I think it makes it difficult for them to find shots, the downside is they're just going to take checkdowns over and over. So if you want to make them play a long game, play that style. Play cover 6, bracket in Amari Cooper, leave your one-on-one with Terrion Arnold, and play that style if you want to make them play the long game, especially if you can get up early. That would make some sense. This is a team that this season is 8th on third down conversions this year. They're also 5th in the red zone, which is outstanding, so that means they will score a touchdown. That is a battle of two monsters in the red zone, a great red zone defense and a great red zone offense. I think you could absolutely beat Spencer Brown at right tackle with the chop move. We saw that. Austin Bryant had a win on that. If Josh Pascal gets that matchup, let him go get a win on that. Like, you can win that with some physical rushers that know how to do it because they like to quickly get hands on guys. Chop moves, quick wins. That's how you can beat these tackles, but specifically Spencer Brown.
By the way, it's crazy that I didn't say Muhammad when I talk about winning quickly. I mean, obviously Muhammad against Spencer Brown, but this is another one of those examples where you can see on a play like this where he's just kind of late to find this crossing route as he just never puts his eyes there.
And then the interior, again, I love our matchups there. I think we're just better there, but I don't think they're bad. They're actually graded out really well as an offensive line. I just don't think that they're fantastic. So with all that being said, my score prediction for this game is actually a little bit lower than the over-under. We'll see if I'm accurate on this. I know throughout the week I think I was saying 30-21. That was before I did this whole deep dive breakdown, but I'm kind of still in that ballpark. I'm going to roll 24-21 Lions at home. I'm going to take them by 3. The spread is now moved up to 2.5. Shout to BetUS, YouTube 150. That's the code. But I'm actually going to take the Lions in a closer game here. I like them with the points. I like the spread, but I don't know that I love the over for this game. I think even if it's more than that, I still think it could absolutely stay in the under because I think both teams clearly want to run the football. No one wants to play from behind. But if either team jumps out big, all of a sudden that over is probably going to get hit pretty quickly. So we'll see how this plays out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, but I just like a lot of matches for us in this one. Thank you, Brad, for watching, and I'm out.